It is such a blessing and an honor to be with all of you this morning. I want to once again extend a special welcome to our friends who are joining us from the UU Fellowship of Ames, from the UU Society in Coralville, from the church in Stockton, from the fellowship and congregation in Quad Cities, and all others who are joining us on Zoom this morning. I was a little nervous. I hadn't considered the fact that we just have the basic Zoom package. And then it dawned on me as I was talking to RRS, I was like, boy, I hope we don't crash this thing. So I think we are still doing okay though. So that's great. As was mentioned earlier, my name is Samuel Felderman, and I am blessed to serve as the minister here at UUFD. And today I want to talk to you about an experience I recently had that was striking enough that I decided I needed to talk about it. I had something else planned for this service, which felt frankly safer to talk about, which is very tempting, especially because I knew we were going to have guests with us today. And I think we may actually have some other ministers from the UUMA joining us. And my worst fear is that they will think I am crazy as you all know that I am. And so here we are. But in spite of my fears, I have decided to give this reflection, and I hope that this will be something that provides value to all of us gathered here today and translates across the various contexts from which we come. So to begin, I need to explain to you, in order to explain the event that took place that I want to talk about, I need to explain to you that within the last year, I've taken up a new spiritual practice that I learned about by reading this amazing book, let me find it here, entitled The Intimate Way of Zen. Here's the book. The Intimate Way of Zen, which is written by James Ishmael Ford and is available through the UUA in Spirit bookstore. I do not get a cut of their sales by sharing that with you, but it is an excellent book and I would highly recommend you reading it. Ford, the author, is a Zen Buddhist master, and he is also a UU minister. And like me, he was also raised in a conservative fundamentalist Christian tradition and came to Buddhism and Unitarian Universalism through reading the parables of Jesus. And so reading his work was really quite moving for me. His book explores spiritual themes of peace and wholeness and love through the lens of a meditative practice known as the 10 Oxherding images, which Pam so beautifully introduced for us earlier. These 10 paintings emerged in the 12th century CE in China, and each one is accompanied by a short verse which tell this story of an ox herder who is searching for, you guessed it, an ox who's gone missing. According to some in the Zen Buddhist tradition, these 10 paintings contain within them the whole story and secret of enlightenment. And by studying these images and by meditating on them, a disciple might attain enlightenment. Now, I say might because Zen has this fun and frustrating and somewhat unsettling belief, which was spoken of in our first reading, which is that sometimes enlightenment just happens, and sometimes it just doesn't. In our first reading that was read for us so beautifully, when the monk asks the priest why it was that the Buddha, who had done everything right, sitting in meditation for ages and ages and aeons, when he had done everything right, why he hadn't been enlightened, the answer was because he hadn't. And then the priest walked away. The Gateless Gate, this book of koans, or Buddhist parables or riddles, if you like, is full of these stories, of these unexpected truths that point to this idea that enlightenment is not something we earn or achieve. It's something that just happens to people. The Coens tell stories of people who find enlightenment because they stopped to smell the flowers when they were on the way to the market, or because they tripped while they were looking up at the moon, or because they were trying to weigh flour in a marketplace and got scratched by a cat. In the case of the Buddha, who sat for ages, for example, well, he didn't find enlightenment by sitting for ages and ages. By his title of Buddha, we can infer that he did find enlightenment, just not the way that the monk thought he should have. He got there, just not the way we think he deserved to get there. Now, interestingly, at the same time, the 12th century in China, the same time these Oxherd images are being created, on the other side of the world, in a monastery in England, a Carthusian monk whose name is unknown to us was writing a book known as The Cloud of Unknowing, who was talking about the same thing, except through a Christian lens. This text, The Cloud of Unknowing, is cherished by both Christians and non-Christians alike who are of the mystical persuasion. And that author reminds us that in meditation, or what he calls stepping into the dark cloud of the unknown, one does not force the divine to pour its gifts upon us, but rather being in that space of unknowing, that space of resting in the nothing, we prepare emotionally and mentally for when the gift of enlightenment arrives. Both the 12th century Zen teachers and the Carthusians of Middle England seem to teach the same thing. One does not meditate to become enlightened, rather one meditates so that you are prepared for when enlightenment happens to you. So, being someone who sort of is teetering on the edge of becoming unmoored from linear time and space anyway, I tend to not know what day it is. I tend to be confused a lot. I decided that it might be wise to take up meditative practices because the line between enlightened and completely out of touch with reality is very thin. So I thought perhaps I should prepare for this terrible event that could happen to me one day, that I might smell a flower and suddenly, boom, I become enlightened. So I took up this practice of the 10 Oxherding images. And friends, it really is something I would strongly encourage. Each day I try and sit with one of these images based on the date of the month. And I spend some time with the verse, and I contemplate, and you create a mantra out of a short piece of the verse. And on the day in question, this day where this crazy thing happened, I had been contemplating the 9th image, and I was repeating that last line that we heard. The world is bliss, and bliss is the world. Now, the other part of the story that becomes important is on this morning that I was participating in this particular meditation, I happened to be sitting in a garden behind a lovely little cottage that my partner Bryce had rented for us in the county of Cornwall in the southwest of England. We had arrived the day before, and I was immensely jet lagged. I had been awake for 48 hours. I was desperately in need of coffee, and I was exhausted beyond all reckoning. And so while I was enjoying my meditation, I was very out of it at the same time. Anyway, as I basked in the cool sun, the warm sun and the cool wind, I contemplated the lofty and esoteric meanings of what it meant that the world was bliss and bliss was the world. What a lovely statement, isn't that? And you can just sort of think about it with angels and saints and all of those things, and the 10 million Buddhas singing on the leaves. And after I was done, I left the back garden to cross the village green to the small coffee shop that the Airbnb host had suggested that I go and get breakfast at. And that's when I saw the sign at the entrance of the village that I had been too tired to notice the night that we had arrived. You see, Bryce had planned this whole trip. I had no idea where we were. I had no idea where we were going. I'm a real passenger princess. I just showed up for the ride. So there I was, standing in the village green, and there was the sign, "Welcome to Bliss." Suddenly, being in bliss wasn't some sort of lofty ideal to strive for on an astral plane or some sort of spiritual endeavor to embark on. Bliss was a place that you could drive to. It was a place that you could walk around in. It was a place that I had unknowingly been kidnapped and taken to and slept in the night before. It was a place that I was now standing in a ripped t-shirt, in gross sweatpants, jet-lagged and dressed and desperate for coffee. I suddenly broke out in this terrible cold sweat, friends, because my worst fear had been realized. I had arrived in enlightenment. I had come to bliss. I had reached the summit of my spiritual life, and there I was, possibly about to meet God and see angels, and I was wearing the wrong underwear. Now, before you think that this really is too much, I want you to know that I did eventually pull myself together. And I am aware that the village of Bliss in the United Kingdom is not nirvana, although it is a beautiful little village, and I would invite you to go if you're ever in the area. But in that moment, something did shake in me that I think is really easy to lose sight of when we think about spiritual practices, but I think that is essential when it comes to our Unitarian Universalist faith. Our sources, our principles, and our values as Unitarian Universalists call on us to strive for lofty goals. They invite us into wisdom and knowledge. They invite us to rise upwards into beautiful heights of wisdom and inner peace and enlightenment. But if those things and those practices become disconnected from the earth beneath our feet, if we let them carry us off into the ether, if we let them take us away from the common and complicated world around us, then we're not really much good to anybody. At the same time, though, if we spend all of our time in the trenches of life, striving for justice and fighting like hell for our neighbors, but we refuse to ever look up, if we refuse to ever look out, if we refuse to ever step back and recharge, if we refuse to ever be struck by enlightenment or awed by beauty or touched by the divine, then we will inevitably grow very, very tired. We will grow bitter, and we will give up on who and what we have been called to be. Friends, as I have returned to this phrase, the world is bliss, and bliss is the world again and again, I have come to see it as much more multifaceted and much more layered as I did on that morning in that back garden in Bliss when I realized that I was in the wrong outfit to meet God. When I say that bliss is the world, what I am trying to say and what I am trying to remind myself is that every leaf and every tree and every star and every person, even the people, and perhaps especially the people that I don't like, especially the people who drive me nuts, especially those people who think differently than I do and vote differently than I do, those people that I just wish were separate from me. Those people are infused with dignity and beauty and value and meaning. And to be alive and to live my UU values is to acknowledge my part of the web of life connected with them and to cherish and tend my connections with them, even when I wish I could cut them off. And when I say that the world is bliss, what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to remind myself is that every leaf and every tree and every star and every person, and again, the people that I can't stand, the people that drive me nuts, the people who think differently than I do, all of us have been called to something higher and bigger and better that I or any of us can ever imagine. But we will only get there if we go together. Friends, throughout time, the great religions of the world have called for people to strive for the bigger and the better, and they have also tried to find ways to cut out the people they don't like. That's where the concept of hell comes from. Hell is where we send people we don't like. But as Unitarian Universalists, I'm really sorry, we don't have hell. We believe that we take everyone with us. Our friends around us believe in heaven. Others around us believe in enlightenment and nirvana. But friends, we have the privilege and the duty, and perhaps even the burden of believing in something else. We believe in love. Friends, to be a UU is to be a person of the both and. Our theology insists that we become very eminent, but also transcendent. We are people who live in the mystical and also dwell in the mundane. We are people who are very, very annoyingly logical, but we are also wildly in love with mystery. We are a people of deep roots and a people with our heads in the clouds, and we are a people that our world, our nation, and our neighborhoods need very badly. As we go from this place, then, I hope that we will strive to be people who see that this world really is bliss, and bliss really is the world. I hope that we will see in the mud and the mundane that enlightenment is waiting just around the corner, and that in the loftiest of our ideals, there are seeds of action and justice and connection just waiting to sprout and flower. I hope we will walk this path of both and, answering the call to be the people our world needs. And when we are struck with moments of wonder and beauty beyond our dreams, I hope we will have the courage to share that with one another, because it is what we need to keep going to make this world a better place. May it be so. Amen. Friends, our closing hymn is number 163, 163.